Yeah.
Sandy! Danny? What are you doing here?
While you were watching that dance scene and smiling, the cast was quietly dying. People were collapsing mid-shoot, and one even ended up hospitalized. And that is only scratching the surface of 10 weird Grease facts you've never heard before. Summer nights, leather jackets, and a jukebox playing in the background. Then Grease arrives in 1978 and takes over. John Travolta with his slicked back hair and swagger, Olivia Newton-John with that soft voice and bright innocence. Everything felt perfect. But behind the scenes, it was anything but. Maybe you slicked your hair back trying to be Danny Zuko or threw on some of Kanicki's tough guy swagger. Doesn't matter. This video was made for guys like you. Hey, hit like and subscribe for more deep dives into the movies that raised us. Don't forget to share this with someone that would not skip a chance to rewatch this classic. Everyone playing Rydell students was well into their 20s and early 30s. John Travolta was 23. Olivia Newton-John was 29, a dozen years older than the teenager she was playing. Even Stockard Channon was 33, playing a 17-year-old Rizzo. The crew had to use soft focus and lighting tricks to help sell the fantasy. Kelly Ward, who played Putsy, was the baby of the group at 20. Director Randall Kleiser knew this was a problem, so he invented a solution. During auditions, he would walk right up to each actor's face and check for crow's feet around their eyes. The idea was blunt. Real teenagers don't have laugh lines. But there is an irony in that approach. He built an entire screening system around wrinkles while simultaneously casting a 33-year-old as a teenager. But the reason behind working with an older cast was actually genius. During that period, child labor laws meant younger actors could only work limited hours on set, but older professional actors could legally work longer hours without restrictions. Logistically and business-wise, it was the right move. This tells you everything about the movie. It was a dream version of high school, romanticized, stylized, and a little surreal. Maybe that's why it hit so hard for many of us, because we weren't watching real kids. Instead, we were hooked to performers old enough to carry a movie. Guys with the energy and confidence to make us believe in a world that never quite existed. Getting the cast through the door might have been complicated, but it turns out getting Sandy there nearly broke the production entirely. The Sandy Olsen you grew up watching was never supposed to exist. In the original stage musical, she was Sandy Dombrowski, a Polish-American girl from Chicago. All of that changed on set. Before Olivia Newton-John, the producers chased half of Hollywood. Marie Osmond was near the top of the list, but she said no. She didn't think Sandy should have to change herself for the guy. And honestly, she had a valid point. Then came Carrie Fisher. Kleiser even visited the Star Wars set just to watch her, but he didn't get a feel of how well Fisher could act, let alone sing or dance. Through it all, Travolta kept pushing for Olivia. His exact words were, "Every guy in the world wants Olivia Newton-John as their girlfriend. If you don't see this, you guys are nuts." This might be the boldest casting pitch ever. Eventually, Olivia agreed to test with Travolta, but there was another problem. She couldn't nail an American accent. This is where most productions would recast, but not these filmmakers. They did something different. They rewrote the character entirely. Sandy Dombrowski became Sandy Olsen, an Australian transfer student. The most iconic female character in movie musical history wasn't built from a bold creative vision, she was built from a practical fix to a casting problem. And somehow, that version became the only one anyone ever remembers. Funny how one small fix created magic, because the next story shows what it actually cost to film it. The National Bandstand sequence was shot inside the gymnasium during a blistering California summer. The gym had no air conditioning, and they packed dozens of dancers into that single room. All the doors and windows had to stay shut for light and sound control. Soon, the temperature soared to around 116 degrees. This is where it gets really uncomfortable. Everyone was in heavy costumes, from wool suits to thick crinolines. And the blazing lights overhead and no breeze to help cool things down, and also no breeze to help cool things down, and enough hairspray to fog up a building, and makeup that basically dripped off of faces. Just imagine all of that, and then someone yells, from the top for the 45th time. It stops being filmmaking and becomes a survival test. When someone finally cracked a window, the relief lasted about maybe 3 seconds. The smell from a nearby slaughterhouse then drifted in and mixed with sweat and hairspray. So they had a choice: roast slowly or breathe processed meat. It took 5 grueling days to film that sequence. Dancers collapsed and extras fainted. It was so bad that Michael Tucci, who played Sonny, was hospitalized for dehydration. That was the real cost of making the scene you watch in about 8 minutes. It looks effortless, but nobody had any idea those kids were half-cooked. But they pulled through, even when the set felt more like a sauna than a school gym. But this next set proved chaos could get even stranger. Do you remember the Carnival scene where Kaneki and Rizzo also made up? Producer Alan Carr didn't fake it. He rented an actual traveling carnival and installed it on a football field. And there's a rather funny story about this scene. Eddie Deason, the guy who played Eugene, got strapped into a spinning ride for multiple takes. When they finally got the shot, he stumbled off and threw up on the spot. He kept showing up and doing it again no matter what the set unleashed. Then Barry Perrill and Michael Tucci decided to hop on the octopus ride during a break, just for fun. Both ended up screaming to get off. These guys had just survived 5 days in a 116-degree gymnasium, not to forget that Tucci had even been hospitalized earlier, and they still discovered new ways to suffer on set. And there's another small detail that always goes unnoticed. As Zuko and Sandy fly into the clouds, they are pink instead of white. That wasn't a camera trick or some form of CGI. The production team hand-dyed real cotton wool pink and hung it on set. That is how far the crew was willing to go just to get that perfect shot, and I think they succeeded. Maybe too well. All that gave the scene an authenticity that can't really be replicated that simply. The next moment here demands improvisation on an epic scale. You're the One That I Want was not part of the original stage musical. The producers needed a song to fill a gap in the film, so John Farrar wrote it and brought it to Olivia Newton-John's trailer at 6 in the morning, the same morning they were scheduled to film it. Glazer heard it and said it sounded awful. He felt it clashed with the whole retro spirit of the soundtrack. It was too modern and too pop, unsuitable for a story set in the 50s. And he had a point. The rest of the soundtrack feels like it was pulled from a jukebox in 1958, but this one jumps forward and shifts the entire mood. But they didn't have a replacement song, time was running out, and they only had that afternoon to shoot that entire scene. Now, remember, the crew didn't have the song until that morning, so choreography had roughly 30 minutes to put everything together. And they couldn't afford to mess it up either, not for the closing number of a major Hollywood movie. But the odds worked in their favor. The song was a hit and went on to sell over 15 million copies worldwide. Glazer had a clear vision for how the film should sound, but on that day, under real pressure, his vision had to bend. They made a call in the moment, and somehow, almost by accident, it turned the final stretch into a masterpiece. Up next, another surprise turned a quiet moment into Oscar history. But before that, let's pause a second. You're watching Grease again. Which scene always stuck with you? Let us know in the comments. And if you're enjoying this ride, remember to like and subscribe. Olivia Newton-John's contract for Grease included a clause requiring her to have a solo number, but there was a problem. Nobody had any ideas for what that song would actually be. The original stage musical had nothing they could work with, so they went looking. And once again, John Farrar came to the rescue. He stepped in mid-production and wrote it fast. And that is how Happily Devoted to You came to be. A soft ballad built like a 1950s love song, but polished for the late 1970s. This time he got it right. However, by the time it was ready, everyone else had gone home. Glazer had to invent an entirely new scene just to justify its inclusion. So Olivia had to come back and do it alone. That backyard and silence is Sandy completely by herself. Even her hair and makeup don't quite match the earlier scenes. It was not a creative choice written earlier, it was just pure improvisation. That subtle continuity error is what makes the scene feel even more real. But there was an even bigger twist to this story. That last-minute addition became the film's only Oscar nomination. The one scene shot way later after everyone had scattered managed to carry the film into the Academy Awards, and although it lost to Donna Summer's Last Dance, it didn't fade away from our minds. Behind last-minute fixes, another scene pushed the cast to the literal limits. The Thunder Road drag race was shot at the Los Angeles River. It's a concrete channel that collects the city's runoff. By summer, that water had been sitting in the California heat for weeks. It was just the perfect breeding ground for bacteria. And every time Zuko and Leo sped through it, it sent contaminated water spreading across everyone standing on the banks. Kleisner was also barefoot because of the heat. He cut his foot on something on the riverbed, but kept going. The next day, he had a 101-degree fever. He still showed up to direct the diner scene, completely out of it, running on fumes. And this takes you back to those 5 days inside that 116-degree gymnasium. These people were not waiting for ideal conditions. They showed up sick, overheated, and in pain. But the heaviest part of this story belongs to Annette Charles, who played Cha-Cha. Days before the shoot, she had been hospitalized. She checked herself out to make the call time, and the moment she finished her last shot, she was rushed straight back to the hospital. It turned out to be an ectopic pregnancy. She had to be rushed to surgery immediately. If you watch the scene carefully, there is a part where she's leaning against a car. That was a woman in pain who couldn't stand fully on her own for long. That scene plays like pure fun, but underneath it, some members were falling apart. That's the thing with the camera, it doesn't show you what it really cost to stand in front of it. After surviving toxic waters and unseen pain, the set was set to get eerily unforgettable. The teen angel role was built around Elvis Presley. The costume was all black, long sideburns, everything straight from his playbook. The producers went to him directly, but he actually turned it down. He wasn't interested in Elvis taking a supporting role in someone else's film. So the part went to Frankie Avalon. Avalon almost turned it down too. He just took one look at the original costume and said, "That's Elvis. I'm not Elvis." They had to redesign it. It's only after they put him in white that he said yes. But it gets unsettling. The original Broadway version of the song didn't even mention Elvis. The lyrics mentioned Sal Mineo. 1 year before filming began, Mineo was murdered. So the writers had to change the name to Elvis instead. On August 16, 1977, the crew filmed the slumber party scene. Rizzo looks up at an Elvis photo on the wall and sings, "Elvis, Elvis, let me be, keep that pelvis far from me." That same day, Elvis Presley actually died. The crew was totally creeped out. Imagine a man turning down a role specifically built for his image, then on the day his name is being sung on that very set, he's gone. In some way, the song outlived two of the men it was written around. Alright, next, get ready to hear of how a single refusal set off a chain reaction that reshaped the film entirely. Before Danny Zuko had a face, it had a frontrunner. Henry Winkler, fresh off Happy Days, was America's favorite greaser, but he actually turned this role down. He was convinced that he would spend the rest of his career playing variations of the same guy, and that's understandable. Back then, typecasting was one of the biggest career killers. The role was then passed on to Travolta. He said yes. He also knew that role from an earlier experience where he played a minor role in the original stage production. When the cameras started rolling, his movements were second nature. He pushed the film from an ensemble piece into a full central love story. The budget was only $6 million, but it earned back $159 million, a whopping 65.7 times the production budget. So, what happened to Winkler? He didn't work for 8 years after Happy Days. He eventually reinvented himself as a producer and spent 7 years on MacGyver behind the scenes. He later admitted that he was stupid for passing on that opportunity. His actual words were, "I went home and had an orange juice." Travolta went home and bought a plane. Jeff Conaway was the original Danny Zuko on Broadway. When Hollywood came calling, Travolta was the bigger name. So Conaway stepped aside and took Kaneki instead, but he had one condition. He was to keep Greased Lightning. It was Kaneki's song, his car, his moment. But Travolta wanted it. And when a star at that level wants something, the dynamics shift. Eventually, Klaisner went to Conaway and asked if that was acceptable, but Conaway didn't budge. Eventually, he gave in. He decided not to chase his own moment, and he was willing to let go of a personal moment just to make this whole thing work. Then, the story took a dark turn. During the Greased Lightning shoot, he was accidentally dropped by cast members and injured his back. Doctors prescribed painkillers to get him through production. He never stopped taking them even after recovering. That addiction followed him for decades, through Taxi and the 2 seasons of Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew. Over those 2 seasons, you could just tell. It was in his face. Years of struggling sitting right there, weighing him down. And then in 2011, at just 60, it finally caught up with him. Cause of death, pneumonia, and sepsis. It's hard not to think about where that road started. But there is a lighter side to this story. Conaway was so tongue-tied around Olivia Newton-John that he never said a word throughout the shooting period. Then, during one of the cast parties, he met her sister, Rona Newton-John. They ended up dating and got married in 1980. When you hear this story, it stops being about one song and the actor that was attached to it. It's about timing, choices, and how one moment on set can quietly shape the rest of a man's life. Now, that dance scene will never look the same. Neither will Greased Lightning. That's what happens when you pull back the curtain on something that you grew up loving. You don't love it less, you just understand it more. Drop your favorite fact in the comments below. If this took you way back, hit like, subscribe, and share with someone who grew up with this one too.